Welcome. If any time you can't hear anyone, please just raise your hand because we want to make sure that everyone hears. This is a wonderful opportunity for us to be together. I'm Joy Payton, and you will meet other people throughout the day. This is the 5th annual Community-Based Heritage Language Schools Conference, and we're so excited to be able to continue doing this. So grateful to American University for the opportunity to work with them. You can see that this is a beautiful venue, and you'll be seeing throughout the day how well this works for us. We started 5 years ago because a group of us were at the Heritage Language Conference at UCLA, and a group of people said, you know, let's come together ourselves. We're in a very large heritage language group, but what about the community-based schools? And so we got together, and a person who was very instrumental, did I do it? Danielle? There we go, there we go. A person who has been very instrumental with us is Olga Kagan. Now did I take her off? And we are so, Olga died in April. Is she up? Oh. Oh, thank you, thank you. Beautiful picture of Olga. Many of us know her. We love her. We love you, Olga. I better stop. We're thankful for your collaboration, for all your support, for everything you've done to move us forward. And Maria has worked with Olga for a very long time. You'll hear about Maria in a minute, but Maria's with us, and that's wonderful. And so we just want to say thank you to Olga and to everything that the National Heritage Language Resource Center has done to support this work. So thank you. Let's just, thank you. So you can put it back now. This conference and the effort that you are all now involved in, is run by the Coalition of Community-Based Heritage Language Schools. And there's a coalition team. Would you all please stand up? Stand up, please. Marta McCabe, Ana Lucia Lico, Tommy Liu, Renata Ludani, and Sigrid Belus. Thank you very much. This is the team that is making this work happen. American University, as I said before, is critical to our work, and we're so grateful for what they've done. And Danielle and Polina would like to say a couple of words. Welcome from American University.
Good morning, everyone. I might talk a little fast because I didn't run my time past Joy. Greetings and welcome from American University. We're so happy to have you here today. On behalf of the faculty and staff of the Institute for Innovation and Education in the School of Education here at American University, we're honored to welcome you to the 5th annual Community-Based Heritage Language Schools Conference. On this 5th anniversary of the conference, it's exciting to see many familiar faces. It's a great reunion who have joined us over the years. Your participation has helped to create a strong network of heritage language school practitioners, advocates, and researchers. I would also like to offer a special welcome to those of you who are joining us for the first time today. I know some have traveled quite far to be here, and others are joining us remotely. For the first time, we have participants over there on that computer who are joining us through a webinar. We know each of you will find today very valuable and enriching. The School of Education and the TESOL program here at American University are pleased to host this program again, and we continue to support the goals and activities of the Coalition of Community-Based Heritage Language Schools. We appreciate our ongoing partnership. The Coalition encourages community building, knowledge sharing, and the process of translating research into practice in order to guide and promote the interests of community-based heritage language schools and organizations in the U.S. The Coalition's work builds on the understandings from related disciplines and informs research, policy, and practice in bilingual education, English language learning, and teacher preparation through the exchange of teaching strategies and methods and ideas. This annual conference provides an opportunity for practitioners, new and experienced knowledge creators, as well as current students to engage in an exchange of ideas and explore the intersections of evidence-based practices and the realities of practice in the heritage language community. We are excited today that our very own associate professor in the School of Education, Jennifer Steele, will be presenting in one of the concurrent sessions about her research about dual language immersion programs. Dr. Steele is a renowned and influential researcher and represents AU's commitment to the scholar-teacher ideal. After sharing results of research on the Portland dual language immersion study, she will lead a rich discussion about how best to make use of dual language immersion research to address the questions and concerns of the heritage language programs. It's a perfect example of how sharing research can strengthen policies and practice. Today is very full, so get ready. I hope you slept well. The Coalition team and Joy just went through, so Joy, Ana Lucia, Tommy, Marta, Renate, and Sigrid have put together an engaging agenda, and you will enjoy every minute of this experience. Thank you for this team, especially Joy, for your tireless efforts to bring this conference into reality. We're particularly grateful to Maria, our keynote speaker, for sharing her expertise on engaging students in community-based schools in project-based learning. I know we're all looking forward to that presentation. And I'd also like to thank our conference partners and sponsors, including the Center for Applied Linguistics, the National Heritage Language Research Center, and the American Council on the Teaching of Foreign Languages for their support of the program. Please enjoy your day. I hope you're enriched by the conversations and inspired by this great work. Thank you all.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Polina Vinogradova, and I am so happy to welcome you all here to American University on behalf of the TESOL program and the Department of World Languages and Cultures. It's really, to a certain degree, unbelievable and makes me so excited and happy to think that Joy and I, we were talking about the possibility of this conference 6-7 years ago when Joy was saying, wouldn't it be great to have a heritage language conference and bring heritage language educators and enthusiasts and program directors here to the East Coast and DC metro area. And it's really amazing, as Danielle said, as Joy said, to see that it's the 5th time we're here. And in the first couple of years, we were saying, well, shall we do it again? Is there interest? Will people come? And to see how many of you have been coming a year after year, and to see how many of you are joining us this year for our 5th conference, and to see the richness of the agenda and the richness and the importance of the discussions here. It is just so heartwarming to me. And somebody might say, you know, you run a TESOL program, you work with English language teachers, but it's very important for the TESOL program to have a conference like this here, because not only we value English language education and teachers of English and learners of English, but we greatly value all of our language heritage and cultural heritage and multilingualism that brings such great richness to all of us. So again, welcome, and I definitely want to say special words of thanks to Joy, who is really such an enthusiast putting all of us together, and to Danielle, who really makes this conference happen. Thank you, and so happy to see you all.
Thank you, Polina. And also, the co-sponsors of this conference have been mentioned. I'll just say a couple words about the Center for Applied Linguistics, which has been working with us since the beginning. We grew out of the Alliance for the Advancement of Heritage Languages at Cal. Joel Gomez, the president of Cal, wants to be here today. He's trying very hard to get here today. He had another conference, ECOLT, and I think he's driving from Ecolt to here so that he'll be with us this afternoon. And so he says, welcome, and very happy that Cal can be a part of this. And also the American Council for the Teaching of Foreign Languages, ACTFL, we're very happy to have the Executive Director, Marty Abbott.
Thank you, Joy. Good morning, everyone. I just want to say how proud ACTFL is to be a sponsor of this incredibly important conference. I want to thank the conference organizers and the sponsors, and especially American University for hosting. And I want to, you may already know, but I want to remind you that last year a very important report was issued by the U.S. Congress through the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, and there were only 5 broad recommendations made in this particular report. And number 3, one of the 5, is about the importance of heritage learners, heritage speakers, and how much they are an asset to this country. And that means that the work that you all are doing is so incredibly important for the students to help them become truly bilingual and biliterate. And we know that they gain a lot of personal benefits from that experience, but we also know that there are very important diplomatic, economic, and security issues related to that, and that it will advance their careers incredibly. And we'll be releasing a report in about a month that talks about the important benefits that are gained by knowing other languages. So I just want to say again that we support you. ACTFL is here with many resources for you that are on our website. You'll be hearing about some of them today, and we're very glad to be a part of this conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Marty. Also, the National Heritage Language Resource Center, which we've talked about, and Maria Carreira will say a couple words.
Thank you, Joy. I am the co-director of the National Heritage Resource Center with Masha Polinsky, who is a local professor. And I know many of you are acquainted with the National Heritage Language Resource Center, but some of you might not be. So I want to take just a minute to give you a little bit of information about what we are, who we are, what we do, etc. We're located at UCLA, and we are one of 16 language resource centers in the nation. The language resource centers have different missions. They're funded by the Department of Education. Our mission is to support research in heritage languages and to support the development of pedagogies, materials, programs that foster the teaching and learning of heritage languages. That's what we do. We just got funded. We got for our 4th cycle of funding, so we're now into our 13th year of operation, and one of our priorities as we move into this new cycle is to work with community schools, because everybody recognizes that it has to start at that level, at the lowest levels, and it has to go through all the way to the end of college, hopefully. So I look forward to telling you about an initiative we're going to be launching today, where we're going to be working with you, involving pooling resources together. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Now, there's all of you who are here, and this is how we're going to do this, because we want to know what languages are represented and who is really working with us closely at this time. So when I say your language, if you are a language representative, and you know who you are, I hope, I would like you to stand up and then signal to the rest of your language group to stand up with you. I want all of us to see the language representatives first. And I would say your names, except it would take too much time. You deserve to be named. But we'll hear about the language representatives throughout the day who are working with the coalition. So when I say the language representatives, stand up so we can see you. And then signal like this so the rest of the language group can stand up, and then say or sign hello in your language, and we will respond in that language. And then we'll go on to the next one. Okay, so let's try this. American Sign Language. Okay, thank you. Amharic. And is there any, oh, and please say hello in your language. Tanastani. I'll try not to say it because I have to. Arabic. Somebody from Arabic was going to be here. Maybe they'll be here later. Bulgarian.
Hi, I'm Angela Kasheva. I'm the founder and principal of the Bulgarian School of Seattle. And здравейте, добре дошли.
Здравейте.
We have someone waiting from
All right. I don't think we had people from the Bulgarian group in the past. This is a first. Chinese. Chinese. Say hello. Ni hao. Czech-Slovak. Ahoy. Farsi. Salom. French. Ah, there you are. Oh. Okay. Bonjour. German. Guten Morgen. Greek. Okay, Eva. Oh, I think Eva is online. Maybe. Anyway, I think Greek is represented. Hindi. Oh, Darshan was going to come and wasn't able to come. But somebody Hindi is here. Hindi, where are you? Will be later. Okay, so Hindi's here. Ashok Oja, you'll be hearing from him. Italian. Okay, Antonio. Oh, there. And Antonio will be here soon. Japanese, Masako Douglas is online. Oh, okay. Masaka. Yeah. Lithuanian. Labas. Korean. Polish. Portuguese. Oi. Spanish. Over here, back there, okay.
I'm the president of ISLA, Immersion for Spanish Language Acquisition, a Saturday program in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and we've got some other programs here. Buenos dias.
Buenos dias. Urdu. Salam. Vietnamese. Vietnamese? Oh, Dantu, no? Oh, there you go, hi. Xin chào. Italian. There he is, Antonio. Say hello in Italian. Buongiorno. Any other thank you, I'm glad you're here, Antonio. Any other languages that we missed? Okay, this is great language representation. There are many more languages taught in community-based schools across the United States, and we want to connect with them. Now, you got to see the language representatives sort of a little bit, and we'll talk more about them later. But if your language does not have a language representative, and you would like to do that, please talk to me, talk to one of us, a coalition member, and let us know, because this is the only way that we can connect with community-based schools is through through language representatives. We can't do this ourselves. At lunch, if you would like to sit with your language group, Danielle, I think you made language labels, and so if you'd like to sit together at lunch, please do that. That's an opportunity to talk and all that. Now, conference overview. I won't give you an overview of the conference because there's just so much going on. We have talks, panels, workshops, plenty of opportunities for you to engage. So if you don't have a program, make sure you get one. We are currently on page 3. Okay, so the program is very well done, and so we're going to be moving from activity to activity. But one thing what we really want is that we share information, we share resources, and we engage with each other, and we continue to find ways to engage with each other. And what people have been telling us in the past is, one conference a year is not enough. That's not enough. And so we have done many things to advance that cause, which you'll hear about over the year. You will receive a conference evaluation at the end. Please make sure that you fill it out. We read those conference evaluations like the Bible. I mean, we study them, we think about them, we contact you to say, what did you mean? We really want to know what is working for you, what do you want next year? And now I have the wonderful opportunity of introducing Maria Carreira, our speaker for this morning. But before I do that, I'm just going to say Maria's going to talk, and it's going to be a wonderful talk. And then a panel of 4 people are going to come and respond to Maria's talk briefly. So when Maria finishes, you know who you are if you're on the panel. Please immediately come to the front, and then we'll have time for open discussion, and everybody can say things and ask questions. So as you know already, Maria is professor of Spanish at California State University and co-director of the National Heritage Language Resource Center at UCLA, NHLRC, where Olga Kagan was the director. Her research and publications focus on heritage languages with a primary concentration. Good morning, Ashok. There's Hindi. Hindi. What? Yeah, no problem. With a concentration on Spanish in the United States and also on less commonly taught languages. Her publications include these, and these are only a few, but I really want you to know what they are. Spanish in the United States, the Polyglot Boarding House. That's such a cool title, and we need to read that book and figure out what's the polyglot about it. Voces, Latino Student Life in the United States. Si se puede, un curso transicional para hispanohablantes. A special issue of the Heritage Language Journal, and if you're not familiar with it, look it up on the National NHLRC website. A special issue focused on identity, a big topic, and Guadalupe Valdez talked a lot about that last year. A co-edited handbook on heritage language education around the world, which came out, what, last year? This year, actually. This year. What's the name of it, Maria? Well, a handbook. It's a handbook on heritage language education, and Maria is a co-editor. And she has co-authored 5 college-level Spanish textbooks. Wow. With her colleagues at UCLA, Maria created an online course for heritage language teachers. This course is definitely worth taking, and the link to it is on our website. So think about that course, maybe to do it with a group, and maybe Maria will say more about it, I don't know. So Maria's recent work focuses on identity, resilience, heritage language development and maintenance. And this is my opinion. She thinks in dynamic and exciting ways about these issues, and you'll see that the minute you get to hear her. She's given many workshops on engaging students and on project-based learning, which is for her topic for today. Now, I just want to tell you a personal story. I had the privilege of starting to work with Maria in 1999 when the Center for Applied Linguistics, the National Foreign Language Center, and Cal State Long Beach collaborated to do the first Heritage Language Conference in the United States. We helped, I think. Cal, NFLC, we helped. But Maria was the on-the-ground person who made the whole thing happen. And it was amazing. It was in Long Beach. The first night of the conference, there was an earthquake in Joshua Tree, which is not that far away, and the whole hotel was shaking like this. And we were all fine, we survived it. And the next day, at the end of the conference, Dick Brecht from the National Foreign Language Center said, "We held our first conference, and the earth moved." Okay, I think we'd rather not have that happen here today. Yeah, but anyway, welcome, Maria, and thank you.
Thank you, Joy, for that wonderful introduction. That's right. Joy and I go back 20 years. It's amazing. 20 wonderful years. So let me get my presentation up there for you. There you go. So my title, it's a long title, and you can see there are 3 words in red. And these words are going to figure prominently in this talk. Engaging, learning in the community-based school context. Not in the title, but also very important, are some challenges associated with engagement and learning and the community school context. One of these relates to the idea that some kids feel that studying the HL competes with some of their other goals, right? If you have kids, and I've had kids who are in sports and play an instrument, everything starts to compete, and the community school is just another burden at some point. Another one relates to limited access to the HL, and this is the main challenge in learning, right? That our learners our children have limited access to the HL, and what do we need to learn our language? Access. I'll be talking more about it later. And then another one that relates to the community school context is this stage that children go through where they reject the HL, heritage language, and the HC, the heritage culture. And I'll be talking about that too. So these are challenges we have to contend with when we think about, well, how do we engage our students? How do we promote learning? And how do we do that in the community-based context? My answer today is going to relate to project-based learning. The project-based learning, PBL, is a great framework for building on these desirables, engagement, learning in the community context, and also for addressing the challenges I have briefly mentioned. Before getting to that, let's just talk a little bit about heritage languages in the United States and their speakers. You probably can't see very much about this chart. It's from the U.S. Census, but it displays the number of languages spoken in the 15 largest metropolitan areas in the U.S. New York and L.A., where I come from, have nearly 200 languages other than English spoken there in the home environment, so they're heritage languages. Washington, D.C., to my great surprise, is number 3 with almost somewhere around 175 languages. A remarkable richness of home languages, heritage languages, right? A heritage speaker, then, is somebody who grew up in a home speaking the HL and is to some degree bilingual. That degree, of course, varies. We know that 1 out of 5 children in the U.S., 1 out of 5 children in the U.S. are heritage speakers, a remarkable statistic. And you can see that the area where we are has a fairly high concentration of heritage speakers. Not surprisingly, given that 175 languages are spoken in this area. I'm going to be using the term heritage language learners. A heritage language learner is a heritage speaker who is learning the language, so in the instructional context. And there are two important pedagogical dimensions to HL learning: the language dimension and the social, emotional, affective dimension. Let's start with the linguistic dimension. And the linguistic dimension comes down to diminish input and output, which are essentials to learning a language, right? Input, we know, is interrupted before the language acquisition process is complete, which generally takes about 18 years, but we know that when children start school, typically at the start of school around age 5, the input, if not completely cut off, it's diminished because, of course, they start school in the mainstream language, English, here in the United States. That results in incomplete acquisition, in some cases loss or attrition. We also know that the input is limited in terms of quantity, how much of it they get in a given day, and quality. It tends to be, because it's in the home context, it tends to be oral, right, and informal. Now, when I say quality, I don't mean it's inferior quality. It's just a different type of input that they're getting. They're not generally getting input to the written language and to the formal registers. This chart or graph kind of captures what's happening. You can see as exposure to English is going up throughout the lifetime, the exposure and use of the HL is going down. Now, as I was preparing this little bit about the linguistic dimension, last night it occurred to me that I missed the most important thing. I concentrated on what they don't have, but I forgot to point out, how typical is that of a teacher, right? I forgot to point out that they can do a lot with language. That should be the driving theme when we talk about the linguistic dimension, right? So the linguistic dimension then hinges on us giving them access in terms of input and output to the HL. So the pedagogical implications is whatever you do in the classroom, think about extending input and output opportunities and build on what they can do. But of course, heritage language learning, as you all know, is not just about language, right? There's also this affective, social, and emotional connection that comes into play that's critical, that drives learning, and in some cases results in the rejection of language, right? So, and this connection, this emotional dimension, distinguishes HL learners from native speakers. HL learners have a different relationship to the HL than native speakers have to the native language. And it also distinguishes HL learners from L2 learners. We know from research that HL learners' relationship changes over time. And it basically goes through 4 stages. When kids are very little, they just lack awareness that they're different from the mainstream world. The home is everything, right? Then typically when they enter school, they enter the stage of ambivalence or rejection. This is what I was talking about earlier, where they realize they're different, and what makes them different is this language and this culture of the home. So a lot of times kids, this is a stage where they don't want to communicate in the language. This is where they speak back to you in English when you try to say something to them in the HL. If you're lucky, around the high school years, they emerge out of this rejection, and then they go to the opposite extreme. Human beings, we're prone to the extremes, right? Then they seek out the HL and the HC, sometimes to the exclusion or rejection of English. And finally, when we all get to be adults, we reach identity incorporation, which is a stage where you think, yeah, I'm made up of 2 languages, I straddle 2 cultures, that's who I am. So these are the 4 stages, and it's important to note this because you need to take into consideration where your learners are in these stages when you design instruction, right? So the pedagogical implication is that engagement hinges on addressing these developmental stages, being at the right place, the instruction being at the right place developmentally, and addressing the social and emotional needs that our learners bring to the classroom, right? So if they're at the rejection level, we need to figure out a way to still have them in school. And if they're feeling that the HL is competing with what they want to do, sports, music, whatever it is that they want to do, we need to figure out a way to address that concern, 2. So recapping, we now have 2 dimensions, right? We want to extend input-output, and we also want to address the emotional needs and in developmentally appropriate ways. But there's still more. Because HL learners' abilities and affective and social needs vary according to life experiences. So somebody who's traveled a lot to their home country obviously will have greater proficiency. Somebody who's had good experiences with the HL will also have good reaction to the language, good emotions. Whereas somebody who hasn't traveled very much or hasn't been exposed very much to the language won't speak the language all that well, and maybe will have had negative experiences. As life experiences change, in other words, so do HL speakers' proficiency and socio-affective needs. So what this means is that heritage language learning needs to be differentiated. Traditionally, L2 teaching has not been differentiated, largely because L2 learners start at 0 and they proceed all along the same pathway, right? This doesn't mean that they're all the same. We obviously know that some L2 learners are much more interested than others, much better students than others, much more talented than others. But what it means is that we can predict, based on course history, the topics that they're familiar with. Not the case with HL learners. So here are the 3 must-dos of heritage language teaching: extend language, address emotional needs in developmentally appropriate ways, and differentiate instruction in some way. And with this, enter project-based learning, right? So project-based learning, my message today, is that it's perfect for addressing these learning needs that I have mentioned, the engagement needs in a community setting. And it's perfect because it offers extensive input-output, authentic input-output, and learning opportunities that are engaging, that can be made to be developmentally appropriate, and that can be differentiated. I have been using project-based for about 4 years now, and I don't think I'll ever go back to doing anything. I have the textbook, I have an HL textbook, which Joy mentioned. I don't use my textbook anymore. For me, it's the way to go. So, quick definition. Project-based learning is a learner center. That's where the differentiation bit comes in. Teaching approach in which students work over a prolonged period of time. Parenthesis, I'm going to time out. We are used to task-based teaching, where we put students to work in groups and we say, pretend you need to buy a plane ticket because you are going to go to Rio de Janeiro, and communicate. That's a task. But notice that's not authentic, and that doesn't extend over a period of time. It's something that takes place in 15 minutes at the most, right? Project-based goes on for a long time. It involves complex issues. It goes on for a long time precisely because it involves complex issues and challenges. And then to communicate what they have learned, students create a product. The product is what demonstrates performance, right? And what demonstrates that they have dealt with the problem, the real-life challenge that they're addressing. You're all familiar with PBL. If you've planned a trip, purchased a car, applied to college, gotten married and planned your wedding, whatever it is that you've done that has been complex and has required you to think ahead and plan for a while, that's project-based learning. So you have an intuitive understanding already of what's involved. I just want to make it explicit in this presentation. A key issue in project-based learning is authenticity. And authenticity means that the project has real-world context and uses real-world processes. So think about if you planned a trip, what do? You went online and you read ahead of time. Maybe you asked your friends. Those are real-world processes for researching a trip. Those are the kinds of processes that you want to employ when you design a project. And it is authenticity also means that it's connected, that the project and the product are connected to students' concerns, interests, and identities. Authenticity and engagement are inseparable in HL learning. They're inseparable really in all language learning, but they're particularly important when it comes to heritage language teaching. And there's a very nice study in the Heritage Language Journal that really brings this out. Kim Helmer wrote a study where she followed a classroom, a Spanish heritage language classroom at the high school level. And she was finding that students were rebelling against what the teacher was doing. And it's not that the teacher was bad, not at all. The teacher had some really interesting things to show the students, but the students were not going along with it. And she quotes what this one student said to her: "It's just a story to learn Spanish. It's not real." That reminds us of how powerful language learning is when it's real, and how diluted and uninteresting, primarily for HL learners, but for everybody, it is when it's not real, when it's just an excuse to review language forms or topics, right? And she says that the reason why this is the case is because HL learners are used to highly contextualized and communicative language. A language that is used in a naturalistic, unauthentic context. If you strip language learning of that, they will not go along with it. All right, so now what I'd like to do is give you an example of a project that actually emulates naturalistic, authentic context. That actually fits that definition. And it's a project created by my colleague at California State University, Long Beach, Professor Masako Douglas. I'm going to call it the Dunk Tank Project. I believe she also calls it that way. I'm going to massively simplify what is a very interesting project, but Masako is with us virtually, right, Masako? And so later on, she'll have a chance to give you more details. The genesis of the project was that in a Japanese heritage language school in Southern California that Masako is involved in, students wanted to put a dunk tank as part of their Japanese summer festival. Of course, as you can imagine, this is not a traditional component of a summer festival, of a Japanese summer festival. So on the basis of what transpired in her school, Masako created a project for high school students, heritage language students, at the intermediate level. And the driving question was, how can we create, for students, this is what students were working on, how can we create a successful campaign to convince the administration to allow the inclusion of a dunk tank booth in our Japanese summer festival at school? You can see now it connects to what they want, right? There were 3 sequences involved, the first 2 of which, here they're in lilac, involve collecting information, and the last of which involved creating a product. I'm going to go into them very briefly. The first task involved essentially communicating with Japanese students in Japan who were learning English and having them do a word association game, I suppose, for festivals in this festival, the summer festival. This is all done in Japanese. Masako produced these word clouds in English. And notice that they did this with the Japanese students in Japan, the HL learners in the United States, and the teachers in the school. And notice they each produced different products, which gets now into the area of products, practices, and perspectives in language. The 5 C's, one of the 5 C's of communication, right? Of the 5 C's of ACTFL, the standards. Task 2 also involved collecting information, but here the information was collected by watching videos. You can see the interpretive mode being practiced here, and also by going on websites and reading about what's available out there, what other people have done for this kind of festival. And then task 3 involves giving a persuasive speech. Now, I mentioned earlier that the students are at the intermediate level, but as you know, giving a persuasive speech is at the advanced level. So how do you get intermediate level students to produce advanced level language? Well, because of the scaffolding activities, right? The first two tasks involve collecting massive amounts of information which provide access to vocabulary and linguistic structures, as well as cultural information. And then the last task, which involved giving a persuasive speech, involves studying watching videos about how do you give a persuasive speech, right? So what we have is, you can see the power of project-based learning here, where you're taking students that are at the intermediate level, and if you scaffold the activities enough, and scaffolding involves providing input, plenty of opportunities for input and output, you can get them to produce advanced level language. The Dunk project then illustrates how PBL extends input and output. And in fact, it aligns well with the structure of projects, which are defined by 3 steps. There's a collection information stage, a information processing stage, and a presenting information stage. And you can see that all these stages are present in the Dunk Tank project, right? The first 2 tasks involve collecting and processing information. That again provides a lot of input. And then the last task, which is the output stage, involves again, getting a lot of input, but it involves producing information. So now, let's talk a little bit more, now that we have the general idea of how project-based works, let's unpack this concept of input and output a little bit more, so we can start to get the details of how this works in project-based learning. Now, when we think about language teaching, despite everything we know about communicative teaching and all that other stuff, we really like to go back to accuracy of grammatical structures and vocabulary. I frequently have to remind myself that that's not the only thing that it's about, right? In fact, we can talk about context. Heritage language learners like to function in the home context, they're pretty good at that, and in informal context, we want them to function beyond those environments. Topics, right? What can they talk about? In the Dunk Tank project, we can see them being able to talk about festivals and food. I didn't mention it, but food was a big deal in the word association task. Functions, can they narrate? Can they ask questions? Can they argue? We can talk about text types. Can they only produce phrases? Can they produce sentences? Can they connect sentences into paragraphs? Can they connect paragraphs into discourse, right? The skills, the 4 skills, the 3 modes of presentation, the interpersonal, where it's interacting. Paul Sandberg always does this, 2 people talking to each other. The presentational, where it's me talking to you, what I'm doing right now, right? And the interpretive, where it's stuff coming at you, either in reading or you're listening, watching a video, right? So we can think about how developed those different skills are. We can talk about communicative strategies such as rephrasing, asking for clarification, or we can talk about cultural awareness, right? So I'm sure by now you've caught on to what I'm doing. I'm using the performance descriptors for language learners that ACTFL has. And the neat thing about the ACTFL performance descriptors is that they provide really well-defined parameters by which to conceive of language knowledge and skills in an instructional setting, and more specifically within the PBL framework. So we can start to unpack, well, what's involved in this task, and of all those parameters, all those descriptors that I mentioned, which one should I target for my specific learners? In so doing, they facilitate differentiation, right? Which is essential. Remember, that's the 3rd step of responsive HL teaching. And they provide a roadmap for curriculum design. So with the 7 minutes that I have left, I want to now show you, is that your count? I want to show you a little bit about how this works. So notice, we can take the Dunk Tank project, Masako's project. We can keep the same theme, which is the festival, and the same driving question: can we convince the school administrators to have a Dunk Tank? But we can vary the product. Remember, product is what they produce at the end to demonstrate that they have solved or dealt with this real-world question, and we can target different knowledge and skills from a list of descriptors. right? So for novice learners, you can imagine creating a project, again, same theme, same driving question, but create a website of Japanese summer festival activities collected from the web. Now notice the learners here are not creating with language, which is something that it's a characteristic of intermediate level language learners, but rather they're collecting, adapting a little bit somebody else's preformed language, and then displaying it. So what we have is we're targeting them at the phrase level with preformed language, something that somebody else already created, right? But they're still getting very valuable, authentic input. And notice they're still contributing to that real world question that's being asked. Let's move to the intermediate level. Again, we change the product. And when we change the product, the knowledge and skill, the descriptors that we're targeting change. So let's assume a product, just for the sake of this presentation, where students create digital stories or a book, an actual physical book, which you can now print and looks very real as a book, of stories, written stories, narrating the memorable experience of a family member with this festival. You can imagine doing interviews of a family member to create this product. Notice now, when we change the product, we are actually changing the level of proficiency and the performance descriptors that we're targeting. Because now, in order to produce a book or these digital stories, students have to connect sentences, and they have to create with language, right? They're not just going to repeat what has been told to them. They're going to have to edit it into a narrative, right? They're narrating, probably in the past tense, which is also a function of the intermediate level. And again, you can see they're going to have to do interpersonal communication when they talk to the family member, interpretive as they listen to what the person is saying also, maybe some writing, and then presentational. So we can see now how these performance descriptors embedded in the context of project-based learning allow for differentiation at the class level. You can imagine in a class where learners have different levels of proficiency, producing different products that target the development of different knowledge and skills, right? And what is great about it is that all the products, from the novice level product to the most advanced level product, which is the speech, the argumentative speech, are contributing in very real ways to making a better festival, right? The students that are collecting information, they may be novices, but if they're collecting real world information on what's being done elsewhere in the way of this festival, and they're putting that out for their fellow classmates, they're really contributing even at the novice level. That's unusual in a classroom, right? Because typically, the novice levels or the low proficiency levels, we don't put them to work on real valuable things for the classroom. But you can see how project-based learning lends itself to this kind of thing. Project-based learning also lends itself to systematically targeting the development of skills at increasingly high levels of proficiency through projects. Right? So we can go from, that didn't line up so well here, that's all right. So, you can start with projects at the novice level and theoretically move all the way to the distinguished level, right? And you can see how with some thought, and this is where this is going to go at the end, I'm going to come back to this idea. You can move through it systematically. It would take years, of course, but you can create projects that take students along this continuum. Now, all the projects, really there was just one project and two adaptations that I have shown you, relate to the community, right? But projects do not have to relate to the community. And in some cases, you may not even want them to relate to the community. Projects can relate to science, if that's what they're doing in school, for example, the arts, hobbies, music, sports. I know if you put me to work on a movie, hours, I love movies, I love the history of cinema, so hours will go by, and I love it, right? So why projects that are not related to the heritage culture. Why would we want to do that? Well, remember what I mentioned before, HL learners are frequently reject or not as engaged because they feel that the HL competes with other things that they want to do. They want to do sports, but we're putting them in the classroom to talk in their HL. Well, you create a project on sports, and they might just stay with you, right? And then, of course, there's this stage of rejection. And the trick during that stage is to keep input and output going, even when they're rejecting the H culture and the HL, right? Non-heritage culture or heritage language projects serve this purpose well, while also expanding the context and topics that HL learners can deal with. So, summing up, PBL and HL teaching work great together. You can see how PBL extends input and output opportunities in very authentic ways and in ways that foster engagement and are developmentally appropriate. But I would suggest to you that that alone is not enough. You need to complement it with a rigorous approach to thinking about the language skills and functions that you're targeting. And that's where the ACTFL performance descriptors and the can-do statements and all these other things, all the ACTFL tools are very valuable because they allow us to systematically target things and to engage in systematic curriculum design. And so with this, coming to the end of my talk, and I want to close with an announcement, a wonderful announcement. I think it's something Ana Lucia, Joy, and I came up with in a previous conversation. And the announcement concerns a collaborative project of the Coalition of Community-Based HL Schools and the NHLRC. We've talked about the importance of pooling resources, and that's exactly what we're going to do. We'd like to create a database of projects from the earliest learners to the most advanced learners. And we will, in the near future, have a website where you can give a very specific description of a project that you have tried, and the advantages, what worked, what didn't work, how to adapt it. And hopefully, if we get enough of these projects up there together, we can start to conceive of systematic curriculum design, and we can start to help each other really utilize project-based learning to its maximum potential. In this presentation, you can see I had created an appendix that should help you learn more about project-based. You will see resources. I especially recommend Frederica Stoller's presentation. It's a YouTube presentation. It's excellent. She has lots of examples. And then I have lots of slides on how to do project-based that you might want to consult. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you,
very much.
Should I sit down?
Sure, you can sit down for now. Okay, would the panelists please come forward? So we have 4 panelists. Thank you, Maria, thank you. That was very clear, very exciting, and there's a whole lot that we can all do together, as you can see. And we'll get going on that. We'll be communicating with you about that project. So we have 4 of our language representatives who are now going to respond to Maria's talk. And they can either say what they would like to say, or they can ask Maria a question. So Maria, be ready. Maria, are you going to be ready? In case, sorry, you're distracting. In case people ask you any questions, just be ready, in case the panelists. So the panelists, and I won't say their affiliations because they are in the program, so I won't waste time with that. Anchun Cheng, working in Chinese. Jennifer De Lima, working in Spanish, Jane Ross, working in French, and Masako Douglas, who we will see online when the time comes, working in Japanese. Just remember that each person only has 5 minutes. So if they ask you a question, I'll hold up a sign that says 0 when you're done, okay? I'll be sitting there. Okay, so An Chung, would you like to start? And you can sit there or stand up, either way you prefer. I think those mics work. Try it. Hold on. I don't know if we can hear. Would it be better if they stood up then?
This one's on.
Try it, Anshul.
Hello? Yes, yeah, I can hear it. Good morning, everyone. First, I would like to thank Maria for introducing us the project-based learning. It is wonderful. I think it will be very beneficial for heritage school learners. And for that, now I really would like to testify to the success of project learning. A couple years ago, when I taught heritage school students at highest level, most of them are high school students, they stayed that long because their parents were strong enough to push them go to heritage schools on weekends. After so many years, most of kids would drop out when they get to middle school. Very few left when they get to high school in our area. But I remember one time in the final project, whole school students have to do performance, presentation, or something, right? So in my class, we had students who survive over the years until high school, but with very little progress over the years. Now, it just went there on weekends for fun to meet friends. So the language proficiency level probably is not as high, or that's it, right? And we had excellent students who probably perform at intermediate mid. So it's a huge gap, right? So because of the project, right, the weak students can still perform. Back then, we did that individual project, not the collaborative one, which Maria introduced us. But the weak students was able to use his knowledge to learn about what the Chinese people eat in the breakfast and the comparison with American diet, breakfast. It's very simple, but suitable for his level, right? And the good students, he was very interested in music, play piano. So he investigated a Chinese composer, right? He played his music, but didn't know about that composer. He did a presentation. And after that, because the heritage speakers, they are good at conversation. We always say that they are good at a dinner table conversation. But in a formal presentation, it's the skill that they do not really had many chance to develop. The good students now investigate and did a presentation. His mother came. After the presentation, she said that his kid didn't want to study most of the time because he was excellent and doing many different after-school activities. But because of that, he was interested in a project that's relevant to his music. He actually present using the language much more sophisticated than what he had been doing at home. And the weak student's mother also came over and said that, my gosh, my son changed completely. He was so engaged in that. Now, designing the graphic and the PowerPoint presentation, etc. My question for you would be, I think in emotional and social context, it is wonderful. But in a heritage school, typically our teachers, they are not trained in foreign language education. They are more teacher-centered. But project-based learning requires student-centered. We need a change of culture. And how do we do that in terms of teacher preparation? I think it's wonderful we have that database now, the collection of successful project or product that present share with the larger community. But to start, how do we do that in changing culture of teaching or the mindset of parents even, right? Parents thought, we go to community schools, we want them to read, And for Chinese, it's learning the characters using flashcards. Now, that's all they want, copying the words, right, the characters. But project-based learning, indeed, will engage our learners, and they are interested in that. I'm sure they will completely devoted to that. But how do we make sure that the project could be implemented successfully in the classroom?
Good question. You have 1 minute to answer.
Oh, I wish I could give time more to her.
It is a great question, and it's really, it gets 2 minutes. Oh, okay, but, I don't know, I don't even know if I have 2 minutes of an answer. So I think there are several things I can say as to how you do that. One is you try it, because once you try it, you realize it works, right? So I tried it, and as I said, I discarded my own textbook. Now notice, even as I have tried it, I made the terrible faux pas of when I first prepared my presentation, thinking of the linguistic dimension as what they don't have. So changing culture takes a long time, even for me, right? And I had to think about, wait a minute, they can do a lot, and that should be what launches the project. But the project emerges out of that realization that they can do that. So teachers need to try it. We need to be patient in realizing that changing culture and perspectives takes a long time. But here's a couple of other things. First of all, I didn't mention the benefits for the instructors. If you've been teaching for a long time, and I have, God, you're reading those readings for like the 30th time, and you're doing your grammar thing for the 50th time in your life. It is boring. You cannot get yourself excited about teaching the subjunctive one more time. I got to a level, up to a point where I couldn't do that anymore. Project-based is exciting because they're telling you all sorts of things that you didn't know about. I had a group of students once do a presentation on the history of surgery. He went back all the way to the Greeks and then moved forward to the present and then projected what they will be able to do in the next century. So I came home that night, and that was our dinner conversation. I was excited to talk to my family about what my students had done, right? So it's also beneficial for the teacher. And here's another thing. Heritage language teaching, traditionally we focus on training teachers on the grammar points that you have to teach, the methodologies, all that. Project-based learning kind of embeds that in, all that in implicitly. So even if you don't have all the training and what aspect, in the aspect, is it the perfective or the imperfective that they can't deal with very well, and the subordination, what types of subordinations can learners do? That's really complex linguistic research. But project-based learning, so long as you're doing authentic language, you are covering all that stuff. So the stakes go down in terms of giving them all that teachers all that background on grammar, right? It just kind of emerges naturally out of a project.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, can you hear me? Okay. I am Jennifer DeLima, and I'm here with Aaron Benavides, and we represent ISLA, Immersion for Spanish Language Acquisition. We're in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, and we currently have a Saturday Heritage Language program for Spanish, and we have 190 kids, and we're finding that there aren't enough of them, so we hope that we can be part of this wonderful coalition and have more of this. We know there's a lot going on at the university level. Maria, thank you. We saw that in LA, that they're really supporting these heritage learners in the classroom. That's happening a little bit. We are fortunate to be able to be doing that and really appreciate the extra ideas about community-based learning. We do this very much. I love the idea that one project can support a lot of different levels of learners, because we know as we teach it what that looks like. So we can include everybody. We do, in our 3 hours on Saturday, try to incorporate always literacy, culture, science, and community is a big part, because that's what brings them there, that's what makes the parents happy, that's what once the kids are comfortable coming and have that community, they want to keep coming. So that's an important part. We had some beautiful projects in, I think it was our fifth grade group, was sort of our founding group of kids. So we kind of coddled them a little bit as they've grown over the years. And they did something as simple as produce and create pop-up restaurants for our own community. So they had to research, they had to write, they had to do brochures. They, not so much presentational in the end with this, except that they had to talk to their clients. And I think even though restaurant vocabulary is probably too much outside of their comfort zone, certainly the formality of having to have clients and things like that really helped them presentationally. We were lucky to actually get a grant for a program that we called Isla Impacta, where we said we are going to do some projects that impact our community. So across a long time, we worked with the students in researching a problem in the community. So this was not cultural oriented. This was very much, what do you see in your community? And they discussed everything in the classroom, from bullying to trash to recycling. And they ended up giving presentations in our last class at the end of the year on what they learned. And it was beautiful. I mean, there were tears. There were tears on the teachers, the parents, and not so much the kids. But it was beautiful, and I thought about that, how that really stretched them as far as, even if they had it sort of memorized or were reading, this really stretched them on vocabulary. So, while we know they can all speak well to their, compadres or whatever, they don't always have this vocabulary, so that was beautiful. And from the restaurant group, the kids took their earnings, and an older group of kids, we actually have a few middle school kids still coming, and sometimes we lose a few, but we have the same problems of everybody. But they took the funds and went out to visit, to give supplies to farm workers. So while 60% of our kids are from low income, and we have all nationalities, so in Spanish we have that a little different from some communities. We have Peruvians and Colombians and Mexicans documented, undocumented. But these kids and the parents that went along with them and giving these supplies to the farm workers were really touched. We thought we had our life tough. One of the moms, came back, whoa, okay, I'm not complaining anymore about life. So just the impact all around was beautiful. I think I covered everything I wanted to say, but I really appreciate the resources. We really look forward to having this database. We thought right now we've got to give this to our teachers. A lot of our teachers, most of our teachers, come from within the community. We start them out as assistant teachers, as parents. We've had beautiful stories of how parents have become teachers now. One of our kindergarten teachers was a dad with one kid, maybe sixth grade education in Mexico. Says, I want to be an assistant because I want to be a better dad. So he goes in as an assistant one year. The next year is like our star kindergarten teacher, just blew us away. So these teachers can learn. We can give them the resources, and we're excited about these resources because it is something we can do and make beautiful. So thank you. Hope I wasn't all over the place.
Hi, I've spoken with many of you before, and some don't know me. It was on. Is it closer? Can you hear me now? This should be good. So I'm the president of the French Heritage Language Program, which is based in New York, and we've been working for the past 12 years in a number of different areas, but the one that I would address particularly with the project-based learning is our work with the high school students in a network of public high schools that are designed for new immigrants. So these are called the International Network for Public Schools, and I think we're currently in, I'm looking at my colleague, 7 schools, I think, maybe more. And these are high school students from many different countries in West Africa and Haiti. They have different languages that they also speak at home in addition to French. So just a quick anecdote of how important the project-based learning is for us. The first time we sent a teacher into the schools, she came back and she said, all right, well, I saw the 12 students today, and obviously we need 12 different groups. We need, because this one doesn't know the subjunctive, and this one never learned to read and write because he's from Sierra Leone and they were in war, and this one, and we said, wait a minute, we're not sending 12 teachers for 12 students. We must have some different solution. And we were very fortunate in working with these schools because they deal uniquely with TESOL issues. They are teaching English as a second language to all of their students through the curriculum, through English, through sciences and math and history. And their students, they don't need 12 levels, they need about 250 levels because they're all from different countries. They don't even share a language. And so our teachers began to shadow them, and that's something that was fantastic for us. Each new teacher came in would spend some time shadowing one of the teachers in the schools, and I think all of us can open ourselves up to visits. So for teacher training, I think that's really helpful to find somebody who's doing project-based learning. So we learned how to work with heterogeneous groups, how to build off of their projects. So sometimes they were doing Black History Month in their classrooms with an English author. We would do Black History Month with the Francophone author, and sometimes with maybe 4 Francophone authors, a children's book for the beginners, up to a real novel for the others. And so we worked with those teachers to help, again, make it more relevant, make the work that they were doing in their French classes relate to what they were doing in the rest of their school, which was very helpful. It's not always possible, but it's something that even on a Saturday school, you can find out what's happening in their school. Are they doing Women's History Month? Are they doing Black History Month? What things would help enhance their overall experience? I love the idea of putting more resources on your site, because we have, from the very beginning, one of our missions was not to simply give the classes, but to build resources for others. And so our website, and you can all, if you look for French Heritage Language Program, you will find eventually you will find our website. And we have curriculum resources, and we've always posted quite a number of our projects in English, not just in French, but so that they could be useful for others. So some of the things that our students have done in terms of our projects, of course, the favorite one of every high school student is a self-portrait. Nothing they love more than to talk about themselves. But now with enhanced video, with other iPhones, thank goodness for iPhones, so they all film each other, and they polish their speeches, and they introduce background material and do a little research about their country or each other's country. So they do those. We've done things with family and community relations where they've watched a soap opera from the Ivory Coast, and then they've written their own soap operas. And again, nothing much more appealing to a teenager than to write a dramatic soap opera and then to act it out. And they've participated in theater festivals with other schools. So whereas some schools are sending groups from their French classes, I think now there may be 30 schools in the New York area that participate in this theater festival, and our program is one of the participants, and we usually always come away with a prize. So that's very encouraging for them, and that's something too that you can find out if a Saturday school can participate in other activities. The school that sponsors the theater festival loves to have us come. Our students don't look anything like their students, and it's a wonderful diversification of what they do. I guess my timer says I'm finished.
Thank you, Jane. One thing, I don't think there's no time. We'll have open discussion. Do you want to speak before Masako does?
No, I was just going to address 2 things that Jay said, but that's
Go ahead.
wait. Okay, so the comment about 12 teachers, we can't have 12 teachers, right? It sort of brought to mind my own development with differentiation. I started thinking of differentiation as a problem to solve this limited resources problem, where we can't have as many classes as we have types of students. Over the course of time, though, your mentality starts to evolve, and now I see differentiation not just as problem solving, which it does, but also as really taking advantage of the different skills, the complementary skills that students frequently bring to the classroom. So HL learners are good with reading and writing, because that's how they got access to the language. L2 learners. HL learners are good with spontaneous speaking in informal topics. You can see the creation of a project that involves both things, and then they learn from each other. So here, differentiation is not just a way to group a lot of different students together because you have no other option but to do that because you can't afford opening another class, but it's a way that to build on that diversity that you were mentioning. Another thing I wanted to mention, just 1 second, is the connecting to other disciplines. That's a really good way to design a project. You mentioned the Black History Month, where maybe they can connect what's being done in English literature or in history. You can connect project-based learning to something that's being done in science, in history, in literature. I once taught a class connected to an English class where they read The Grapes of Wrath to look at the experience of Latinos in California. And we read Cajas de Cartón, which is a simpler book, but it deals with the same topic. And it just worked very well in terms of connecting the two disciplines.
Thank you, Jane, thank you, Maria. Masako Douglas. One second, Masako. We're working on it.
1 second.
We're working on it. What are we going to do?
She's just going to put the microphone.
It should come through the.
Do full screen.
Okay, Masako, try talking.
Okay, can you hear me?
Not very well.
Oh.
Can you talk loudly?
It should be connected to the.
Hello?
This is. Oh, that's what it is. That's probably what it is. No. Put it back on HDMI.
After we hear from Masako, we will have a few minutes, hopefully I think about 15 minutes for open discussion. So be thinking about what you'd like to ask Maria or say, and then we'll have a break.
Thanks, Joy.
Yeah, while we are waiting, I guess I can continue sharing what I said, the story. Actually, parents, because of the project, parents involved much more in heritage learners' learning. Sometimes there's a tension between parents and students now. When they talk about school subjects, heritage school, I don't know about other languages, but the textbooks of the Chinese heritage school sometimes are a little bit dry. But when they do the project, their parents become their resources. So their relationship now improves, and both of them now, I mean, the whole family involved. They could interview their grandparents or relatives now overseas. Now it's tremendous benefit now for the whole community or family.
Can we hear Masako now?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, it's getting better. Move to here. So it's better. Hello.
Yes.
Yes, better. Hello.
Yeah, Masako, can you say it again?
Hello? Oh, yes. Okay, so can I start?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Maria, for a clear presentation of a rationale of using project-based language learning at community-based heritage schools. The example of the PBLL, which Maria showed to you, I just would like to mention that the motivation which I created that unit is when the student started saying they would like to, put that the Dunk American favorite game in the traditional Japanese summer festival, all teachers' reaction was, it's not traditional, and it's not good for students to learn traditional summer festival. So I just wonder, what is tradition? Because most of the teachers who were born in Japan and came over here, and then teaching heritage language and cultures here, but their experience and knowledge of a tradition is maybe like 30 years ago, 40 years ago, and even the culture is not like a still things, but it changed. So I would like the teachers to reflect their knowledge about their culture. At the same time, they're teaching their kids. So that unit is just for teachers to think about perspectives and behind the practice and a product. So that unit is just for teachers too. And so that is just my motivation to create that unit. And to the benefit of the PBLL for the community-based schools that Maria mentioned, I would like to mention one more thing. From the perspective of a curriculum designer, PBL is suitable especially for community-based schools, which typically have classes 3 to 4 hours one day on weekend. So this means a large uninterrupted block of time can be available. Also, since all the different grades of the students, K through high school, are there, it is possible to design an entire school PBLL. And the JHL school, which I serve as an advisor, have this entire school project in Halloween time for their fundraising every year. And they alternate Halloween candy sale and autumn harvest festival, where they set up booths to sell plants, baked items, vegetables and fruits, crafts, and they open a restaurant when they make and sell Japanese food. All are organized by students, and teachers support them. And students work in groups, I call this vertical grouping, that consists of upper elementary, middle, and high school level students, with high school students, their leaders. And then they discuss marketing strategies and contact local business and parents to ask for donation of the items they choose to sell, and decide the prices and send the invitation to lower elementary level children and parents, and sell the items and calculate total profit and discuss how to spend the profit. In the past, they just spend their money on field trip, but that's what they decided. And then, so they learn an entire genuine process of business and Japanese language skills needed to successfully achieve their goals. And then lower elementary kids, they become customers of this project. And they learn about currency and simple math to add up prices of the items they buy while learning Japanese expressions to buy. So this is a kind of sort of integrated curriculum which integrates different subject matters which are taught in each level. So the curriculum should refer to the public school curriculum, and then know what kids learn at the public school. So it's just like sort of correlated to what they learn. And what the students learn through the project is highly visible to their parents. We need parents, involvement and an understanding. So we just involve the parents, they help the younger kids to learn how to buy things and how to say it in Japanese, and they are asked to donation, and they are invited, and then they be customers in the project. So parents know what the kids are learning through the project. So the type of the project whenever I design, first of all, should be fun for everybody, be it students, parents, and teachers. And learning should be enjoyable and at the same time successful based on the careful planning and curriculum design, which leads to raising students' motivation to learn at the heritage schools on the weekends. They tend to, lose the motivation to go to Saturday school. So we have to grab the students, first of all, to come to school. And then, as Maria said, engage them in learning, having fun. So that's my sort of principle of designing a PBLL. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you. I don't know what happened to the mic. Oh, it's over there. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. We have 10 minutes, which is pretty decent, for questions and discussion. Who would like to ask? Okay, yes, Antonella.
Hi, my name is Antonella Cortese. I'm from the International and Heritage Languages Association. My question is, I completely embrace project-based learning for heritage language schools, and I encourage it among the heritage language schools that we support in Edmonton. However, the perennial question that we get, and we try to find the best answer to help encourage, support the teachers is, because it's a Saturday school, and we all know about Saturday schools, some weeks our students do not come. Be it that their families are on vacation, be it that the soccer game does take precedence, be it that there's a practice for a recital. How would a project-based learning project go on if anywhere from 1 to unfortunately, up to 5 students could be missing from that class on that day? So how do you help heritage language teachers overcome that challenge? That then the ones that remain with the 3 to 4 that are gone, that are part of the group, go. And then you're either a week behind, or do you just keep moving forward? And how do you encourage those students to keep moving forward without those pivotal people that are sometimes the leaders of the group, for example?
Right. So that's a great question. And at the college level, it happens at a different juncture at the beginning of the semester, where students come in later. There's some students that won't enroll into the second week of the semester, or the third week sometimes. And if you started something already, then how do you work with this? And there is an answer to this. Project-based learning, typically you want to do it in the classroom context, but you do not have to do it in the classroom context. So let me tell you, something happened to me yesterday. So maybe some of you that were with me at the reception, I bit into something and I broke a tooth right here. So I went to CVS and, well, I called my dentist first. He said, don't use silly, it's crazy glue. And of course, I went downstairs and I bought crazy glue because that's the only thing that will hold it. But anyways, I can only get an appointment with him on Monday at a time when I'm supposed to be teaching. So I was staying up at night. Oh my God, what am I going to do? I'm supposed to be teaching, but I have to see my dentist. So it occurred to me, they have something that they can work on their own and they can turn in. It's not ideal, but if you lay out, the thing about project-based is that everything has to be very carefully laid out. Today, you're going to find models of, in my class right now, we're working on writing a CV and a cover letter. And we're at the information collecting stage. So they're finding a bunch of them and taking note of the language and the labels and what they want to copy from that. That's what I'm asking them to do Monday.
So I should have qualified the age group.
Right.
Anywhere from pre-K to high school.
Right.
But mostly pre-K to probably grade 8.
Right.
Because those are the ones that most of our heritage, at least in my experience, our heritage
Sure.
language schools mostly have pre-K
Right.
to grade 8. So
But-
those are the students that wouldn't be supported because those 3 to 5 other students
Right.
wouldn't be there.
You'd be surprised. The younger kids sometimes tend to be better at following instructions. But if the lesson involves interviewing a family member and reporting on it, that can be done outside of the classroom. And their report can be a little video thing that they prepare if you want them to do that kind of reporting back, right? But the tasks don't have to be done in the classroom, and that's one of the rules of project-based. You don't have to sit there. If it's better to go outside and do it someplace else, do that. Okay?
Thank you for that great question, Antonella. Here, we'll go here, here, and here. 1, 2, 3. Maria, maybe you better stay up. If you don't mind. Sorry.
Good morning. My name is Roger Hu. I'm the vice president of the Chinese School Association of the U.S. We about have like almost 500 school across the U.S. All of them, basically is the community-based. So, yeah. So I really appreciate that this conference, give us a chance to talk about the community-based school, how to learn this. So my question for this one is like, I really like your idea of the PBL, but you just emphasized why this kind of project may not HC-based. But in Chinese school, we really not only want to teach the language, we also want to teach the culture too. So is it possible you can incorporate some kind of the culture-related project? I think, we have all the language represented here. So your database really will help us. Thank you.
Absolutely. I mean, ideally, that's what you should be including, some culture, right? It's just sometimes you want to do it in a way that won't be rejected. What I mentioned about a curriculum, if you think about it sort of like a piano curriculum, right? When kids start learning piano, they first learn Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, and then they move through some Bach pieces, and then eventually, they get really good, they move to Chopin. It doesn't mean, I've seen it with my kids many times, the day after they give their recital, they can no longer play that Chopin piece so well, right? But it means that as you go through the motions and prepare for these recitals, you're learning skills. So that's the idea between lining up projects, and they can certainly be culture-based, but lining them up in a systematic way that builds the skills. It doesn't mean that after they complete that project, they'll be able to do everything that they had to do and with your guidance. That's performance-based instruction and assessment, where you're testing what they do with your help. It doesn't mean they're going to have that proficiency level. It just means that it's on the way to learning that proficiency. So your schools can coordinate something that builds progressively to the more advanced levels of proficiency. And to your question about culture, absolutely, you want to put it in. It can't just be about language, or they will turn off, right?
Thank you. Thank you for your question.
Oh, yeah, everybody.
Gaila.
Yeah.
I'm going to try to be brief. Gaila Narkevičienė from the Boston Lithuanian School. It was a very informative and good presentation. Thank you, Maria. However, I have several technical questions or comments, and please, correct me if I'm wrong. You mentioned different language proficiency groups, and I totally appreciate it. However, I can only imagine or physically foresee it happening in college level, high school level, maybe middle school level. Below that, I just,
So why do you say that?
I am not sure how we can engage preschoolers in effective language learning process in project-based learning process.
Okay, let me ask you something. What topics are they interested in, preschoolers?
Yeah.
Cooking? Do they like to cook?
Cooking, yes.
Okay, that's a project, right?
well,
Interview your mom about something, your favorite recipe. And it doesn't even have to be write a recipe or reproduce a recipe. It would be, how hard is it to make these cookies? What are the ingredients in these cookies?
And we do that, but that's sort of, it's not a long-term project. It's not, collect your data, then produce this material. And we do posters. Yes, we do cookie posters, et cetera, et cetera. But I don't necessarily
Okay, so you
see
can
that.
turn it into a long-term project. That's a great question. You're right, because we're used to thinking about the classroom as being delineating, right, what we do. So that one unit of instruction that one day we meet, right? So now the challenge is to just think about how do you extend that project? Well, if you think in terms of the 3 stages, collect information. So you can send them out for weeks to collect. What are the ingredients? Excuse me, they can go to a supermarket and collect the ingredients. They can go online with a parent and figure out how these ingredients are called in their language. They can find products in their languages that have the names of these ingredients. So you go through you go through all that information collecting where you're just getting massive amounts of input. Then you go to the processing information. That can take a long time. You know, what are you going to do with this information? Are you going to create a class cookbook where the mothers are going to help the students produce a nice recipe and tell the history of the recipe? Is it going to be done online? Are they going to do they could do a demonstration, a video demonstration with the parent with the recipe. Now that's moving into the product, right?
But a lot of times it's very difficult to maintain preschoolers focused on the same topic. Yep, they collected the data, they described the cookie, they made a picture of the cookie, they're done, they're ready to move on to something else, football.
So you can embed it in a larger theme. The festival theme, for example, embeds the cooking into the festivities, the dunk tank activity, and all these other things that you can do, the history. So you can expand the theme and make the cooking, if they get bored with cooking after a week, embed it into a larger theme. So I think there's some
I
ideas.
know,
Yeah.
they want to say something, and Guyla, you weren't finished, and 3 of you want to say
Just
something.
technical
You can
questions.
say those very, very quickly, and then you can, each of you can say 1 sentence, because I don't want to cut into our break. Guyla, you can say 3 sentences, okay?
How to measure effectiveness and assess linguistic process.
And don't answer, she's just asking.
The database that you mentioned, will it include teacher preparation, especially teacher linguistic preparation, hence how to prepare the language part of PBL? And yeah, that's it. 2.
Okay, thank you. Now, we're going to have opportunities to speak with Maria. She'll be here all day. So just say your 1 sentence, your 1 sentence, and your 1 sentence.
One
Thank you.
sentence. Should I can answer individually. Okay. For a question before regarding how to engage the parents or make the parents understand about PBL when they want to learn, their kids to learn characters, etc. So I have 2 things. Sorry, I'm running sentence. The first one is the sharing the goals of the program and be able to see previous work from previous students, and then invite those students who already were successful using it so the students and the parents can see where they are going to be, because those are the best assets you get.
Thank you.
And that word is models. Models are very important to PBL.
Okay, so 1 sentence. So I am teaching Sunday school, preschoolers, 3-year-olds, and echoing what her question is. So, and I'm teaching, I implemented project-based learning for online learners in Fairfax County Public School. That was a success. And then the failure, no, it's not a failure, a resistance from college students because they think they need to learn language structure more in the classroom. And then I wonder how we can bring a lot of work for parents, for 3-year-olds family. They don't want that because especially a lot of them, they are like a second generation. So they need, themselves, they have to learn the language, and even I asked them to do some projects at home. They think it's a lot of work. But thank you.
Thank you, good job. Yes. You wanted to say something, or?
Hi, my name is Kirsten Hopkins. I'm running the Saturday school here in this area for German. And I'm going to ask my question individually to you later, but I just wanted to make one quick remark. Our program now has also students 3-year-olds to high school and adult education. I think it's very important, for the little ones to really engage the parents through all kinds of different platforms, because I agree with you, our students are not always present, like in most Saturday schools, so it's kind of hard to do a long-term project-based project. But you can definitely engage the parents through a platform, which we do every week throughout the week, so that the students, even if they're younger, can work from home or get things ready for whenever they come back to the language school. I also wanted to make one more remark to something that was said earlier. It is really hard to differentiate within the classroom. I think you mentioned it too, and some of you mentioned it. And to have like 12 students with 12 different levels. We were at this point in 2002, we had about 180 students, and basically I just told a parent, if you bring me 10 students of the same level as your kids, I'm going to give you a class, and now we are at close to 700 students at the Saturday school. So I think it's really important to engage the parents and tell them, look, if you want, like you're looking for a class that's very homogeneous, you need to bring us more people in order for us to create that, in order for us to hire teachers and cover the cost. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. And please take these opportunities to talk with Maria. She and Antonio will also be giving a workshop later today on project-based learning and differentiating instruction. So now we have a 10-minute break, 11 minutes, because at 11 o'clock we have 3 really amazing workshops. One, starting and sustaining a community-based school in room 603, and there will be people out there helping you find your rooms. Marta McCabe, Renata Ludani, and Sigrid Belus. This is on page 4, so you can see where the workshops are, pages 4 and 5. Assessing student proficiency with Marty Abbott and Tommy Liu in room 601. And helping students gain credit for proficiency and what systems are in place in room 614. Angela Hasheva and Masako Douglas will be there too. So pick up, yes?
Sorry, the workshop scheduled for 6:14 will be here.
Okay, so students gaining proficiency, Angela Hasheva Masako Douglas is in this room rather than 614. Go pick up your coffee, grab your food, go to the bathroom, find your room, get in there, and you'll have 55 minutes in one workshop, 10-minute transition, and then you can go to another one of those 3 workshops. So you get to go to 2. All 3 of them are recorded, so you can watch them later, the one you have to miss. And then at 1 o'clock is lunch in room, whatever room lunch is in. It's in your program. Huh? 6:18 we have lunch. Remember, you can sit with your language groups. There will be posters in there, brochures, and then we'll have a fabulous afternoon. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.